why blockchain enables new business models. And I think I would rather rephrase this question in two. What is it exactly, and how does it do that? So just to make sure we don't have this understanding, blockchain doesn't mean Bitcoin, it doesn't mean cryptocurrency. The cryptocurrencies, and I'm coming back to this at the very end, the cryptocurrencies are just one possible application of what you can do with or on the blockchain. And it's not like one blockchain, there is a great variety of blockchains, hundreds, thousands. It's impossible to count them. Some are public, some are private, some are for sale, some are for lease, some you can rent, some you can build your own. So it's a total mess. But it's important to understand there is not like one blockchain. It's a variety. These are just a couple of those that you might have heard about or read in the press. The blockchain is like radioactivity. You can't see it, you can't smell it, it's there, and it has a potentially very big impact. So we need to make help of pictures actually to better understand what it is. So what helped me, and it was like a moment of epiphany when I thought of the blockchain being like basically the invisible. Being like an invisible version of our mobility infrastructure. So in the mobility infrastructure we have roads, we have tracks, we have vehicles, we have red lights, we have rules. So someone issues permission, someone grants permission, someone takes away permission. So there's like something that is physical and something that is not physical, which is basically the framework in which transportation works. So blockchain is not far from this. We have a technical infrastructure, and we have a set of rules that define how the blockchain works and what exactly it does. Now, again, a picture that I find helpful in this context is that of a handshake. What happens on the blockchain is basically transactions, the same as what happens on the mobility infrastructure. What happens there is transportation. Think of everything that happens on the blockchain as a transaction, and that can be a transaction of a financial value, that can be a transaction of information, it can be a transaction of license. So it's a handshake between two parties, and this handshake, this transaction is governed by a set of rules that are specific to every single individual blockchain. So think of this, which is basically transportation on the roads has different rules than transportation on train tracks. But you have a physical component and you have a set of governing rules. And probably depending on the moment in time when this question has come up, what is the blockchain and how does it work? The answer is different. Probably a year or a year and a half ago, this short presentation would have focused very much on the middleman, because that was the narrative at the time. The blockchain actually helps you get rid of a middleman. It's not that simple, but think of the blockchain as a system that enables peer-to-peer transactions. So I send you money directly over the blockchain, and it doesn't have to go to a bank or another financial institution, because the blockchain enables exactly this. A transaction between peers who are, well, this is a requirement, they have to be connected or somehow on that particular blockchain. Blockchain basically creates a way to go around the current middleman. And middlemen, we have plenty in our lives. So the banks are middlemen. They think of middlemen as an entity that has a central position within a network. So the bank is a central entity. If you send money to someone, it has to go to the bank. If you make a request on Google, it goes through the Google servers. If you book a rental car, it goes through the company that owns the rental cars. And opposite to this, blockchain actually has a decentralized infrastructure. There is no more central entity. There is no entity that governs the way these transactions are happening. These rules are set at one point, but changes of rules have to be agreed by all the participants, by all the stakeholders in this decentralized network. And something that we hear very often when we talk about the blockchain is that it's a ledger. A ledger is basically a big book in which all transactions are recorded. And the very specific characteristic of a blockchain is that that the recordings of these transactions are all immutable. Once a transaction has happened and it has been written in this ledger, you can never again go in there and change that particular entry, because an entry on the blockchain is time-stamped, so it has a specific time and date, and this is actually this endless paper that comes out of a printer. We see this in films. It doesn't exist anymore. But once it has been printed, you can't go back and change it. And then another important characteristic is the encryption. So the encryption actually governs who has permission, how that permission to the ledger is open or not open. So this is just a very, very brief outline of what let's say the foundation is. So this doesn't explain yet why we have a new set of business models. This just gives you let's say the definition. We're coming to the very core feature of a blockchain. It's not a feature for all of those, but let's say if we talk about business applications, and all of the applications we're going to hear about today work with this particular feature. It's the smart contract. So a smart contract is nothing else but a line that's in a contract that says, okay, if this happens, then that happens. So you have a trigger and you have an action. So if, let's say I'm a builder, I build a house, and in the contract it would say, if the house is finished too late, then as a builder I have to pay a penalty. So you have a trigger and an action. The smart contract is basically the translation of this very simple rule from an agreement into code, and that code auto-executes itself. If the trigger happens, then the system does something specific. So if I send you money, then you have to send half of that to your sister. So that could be one of the conditions, right? So this is the smart contract, and we're going to hear plenty of examples how it's done in specific use cases. But I just give you a brief overview on a general list of applications. In financing, so we're going to have one presentation here that has a strong component in financing. Revenue distribution is something that's extremely interesting because these smart contracts auto-execute themselves basically instantly. The second the trigger happens, the auto-execution happens right away. So if money comes into the system, let's say, the system can distribute that money instantly to whoever is entitled to receive a share of that money. So revenue distribution is an extremely interesting use case for the cultural industries. It is a huge problem in music, in publishing, in film distribution. So revenue distribution is very big. Supply chain is something that's rather for the industry. So actually to track the origin of goods, and that what you buy in the supermarket as organic bananas has not been grown on a plantage that is not organic, right? So you can track goods back to the very origin. So once they leave the plantage and the entry is made into the big ledger, that can never be changed again. So you can track back the bananas to wherever they have grown. The Internet of Things is going to be a huge application, because for the Internet of Things, meaning like small devices communicating with each other, we don't need central entities anymore. So all this actually to give you a very brief overview on possible use cases.